Good day. My name is Doug Ferguson, also known as Bearded Chef Sask. I run a page called Beard for Mental Health. I also lead a group called Celebrate Recovery Battleford, which is a recovery group for all kinds of things. And then I also volunteer at Living Faith Chapel as an outreach minister, or person, I guess. Minister to be. And today I'm going to give you my testimony. This has been a difficult thing and a hard thing, but I've been through a lot. And I don't think I'd be here without people. And I don't think I'd be here without other people sharing their stories. So I think it's only fair to give back my story. I lived a pretty good childhood for the most part. I had, two parents, brother, dog, house. My dad worked. My mom stayed at home. I played hockey till I was, 15. I figure skated. I played all kinds of sports. I was quite involved, but I think part of it was I didn't know where I fit in either, because I could hang out with all different kinds of groups, but I think at that time, it's not like I was great at anything, but I was good at a lot, which is kind of the way I am today, I guess. I like to be a part of everything and learn a little bit of everything. Again, I just had a prototypical childhood. I, lived in a small town called St. Brew, Saskatchewan, Canada. And we could run around pretty freely, do what we needed to do, play with our friends. As long as we were home by 5 o'clock for supper, it was all good. We had a lake there, a golf course. I'm still friends with lots of those people today. And that part of my life was pretty normal and pretty good, no question. I was pretty lucky back then to have the family and friends and parents that I did. However, going into my teen years, at 14 years old, we moved to Spiritwood, Saskatchewan, which was a slightly larger town, a little more north. Still a great town, make no mistake. I had lots of fun and I met lots of people and did lots of good things there. But during that time, right around when I moved, 15 years old, I got diagnosed with Crohn's. And so I spent months and months and months in the hospital and all kinds of tests. And I was little, physically small. When I was 15 years old, my learner's license said 4'11". I was like 100 pounds. And so I got picked on quite a bit or looked down on. And so my self-esteem, I look back now, and my self-esteem and whatnot started to take a hit around then because I didn't feel worthy. I couldn't catch up. It took me 5 years to finish grade 10, 11, 12 because I kept failing and acting out because I don't think I knew how to deal with my pain. I don't think I knew how to deal with the mental issues that were coming with it because I don't think I even knew what the mental issues were. Back then, now we're talking the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And stuff like depression, anxiety, mental health issues weren't talked about. It was like if you had a mental health issue, it was like you had to be in a psych ward or psych hospital. So we didn't talk about that. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently about that kind of thing. It's about how we didn't know what each other was going through back then. And part of it was because we didn't even talk about it. Now, one of my first memories of any kind of trauma that I didn't deal with until probably 10 years ago, 20 years, 18 years ago, I guess, 17 years ago, was because I was small and I wasn't great at hockey, but I liked to play. I was pretty good at goal, so I got stuck in goal quite a bit. But my brother was very good. He was a very good hockey player, and my team used to bring him up to play with our team quite a bit, and it was all about Brad. All about Brad, and I would feel left out. I would feel like I wasn't good enough. Sometimes my grandparents would come down to watch Brad's tournaments, but they wouldn't come to mine because Brad was good. He was really good. I mean, now I respect that, and I'm thankful that he was good at what he did, and I know that he had some struggles of his own. unrelated to mine, but we all go through struggles, right? And I guess, like I said, it took me 5 years to finish grade 10, 11, 12. I rebelled a lot. I had trouble in school a lot. I started drinking quite a bit back then, to the point I was even hiding beer in the back of the toilets at school, so I could sneak out and go pound a beer and go back to class. As well as that, my dad was a teacher, so I had to hide a lot of what I was doing, or attempt to hide a lot of what I was doing. And through that, I began to learn to hide my Crohn's as well. I just hid it. I didn't tell anybody about it. I tried to be like everybody else. I didn't want anybody to look down on me. Didn't want people to think of me as different or sick, I guess, was the thing, because I was sick. However, I did finish grade 12. My dad's a good dad, a loving dad, a compassionate dad. And so through all of the trouble that I had with him, and I fought a lot, I still didn't want to disappoint him. Later in my teen years, I was 18 years old, I got my first DUI. I got my first DUI whipping donuts in front of the cop shop. Probably not the brightest thing. During that time, I spent a couple nights in jail here and there, just like the drunk tank. In my early 20s, started going into my 20s, I moved to Lloyd and started drinking and smoking pot a lot. Or smoking more pot, I guess. I got picked up one time, right in my house, actually back from Lloyd. I was back in Spearwood. I got picked up right behind my house and hauled into the police station. I spent the night there, ended up in Lloyd, in the jail in Lloyd, and then in the correctional for a while. It was pretty humbling, and then it wasn't long after that I knew I had to do something. I got back to Spearwood, started working, but all my friends were gone, and I was feeling left behind. And so I applied to cooking school. I went to cooking school in PA, became a chef, and as far as that career went, I went all in, and I never looked back, and I did really good and was quite successful. Won a couple medals, built my own business, mentored other people, opened restaurants, managed hotels. I did well. But through that all, I was focused on work. I was covering everything up with work, and of course, still not admitting my disease to anybody, hiding my disease. And I was drinking a lot. I was smoking a lot of marijuana. And mostly just so I didn't have to feel, or I could keep up. If I drank, I didn't feel my disease, I didn't feel sick, and I could keep up. If I smoked pot during the day, I could make it through the day without feeling sick or tired or hungover. And I could cover things up that way. And it was, that was probably the beginning of the slippery slope, was around that time. And my struggles with mental health as a chef escalated. I had a big ego and a lot of pride. I had to be better than the next person. I have a perfectionist attitude. A little bit OCD, so anything somebody else could do, I needed to do better. If people asked me to do something, I figured out how to do it, whether I knew how to or not. I just wouldn't allow myself to not be, because I didn't want to feel back to less than, which was a lot of my life. I felt less than in a lot of areas. I guess I dived into that life. I say that I dived into that lifestyle, described very well in the book by Anthony Bourdain called Kitchen Confidential, but Saskatchewan style. Not good. Lots of drugs, lots of women, lots of alcohol. Starting to use cocaine. Cocaine was awesome for a time, to some respect, because I felt no pain. But it really increased my bouts of depression. Then my anxiety around that time started to get worse. Or I suppose I started to notice it more. And it was pretty ugly. And the drugs kind of just took over. I began to work for the drugs. I began to spend my life working for my days off, working to get off work and get high. And that was not well. I started competing for women, and it was an ugly time for me. If I have to be completely honest, that was an ugly time for me. I was not a very good person. I lied. I was deceitful. I manipulated. I was, through that time, I was dating a girl, and I cheated on her, which I still suffer with today. That idea that I did something like that and hurt somebody so bad. My first son was born with her in 1998. And I got to see him a little bit here and there, and then there was a surprise visit when he was 6 years old, and I've never seen him since. He's 21 now. And so I have some unresolved. I can see my hands are really hurting right now because I can feel the unresolved issue that I haven't seen him, and I actually reached out recently, and I'm hoping to hear back that I just want to own my part, even if he wants to punch me in the head. Around then, I started thinking of suicide because I was feeling like I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do, and I met another girl, focused my life on work and this other girl, and I had another son, which has been a huge blessing. I love him dear. I love them both dearly, but I've spent a lot more time with my second son. I probably wouldn't be alive today if I hadn't had those two kids, because when I did attempt my first suicide in 2002, I was trying to overdose on crack cocaine, and I felt like I was laying on the floor after 3 days of a massive binge. I tried to kill myself, and I was laying on the floor buck naked in my basement suite, and I felt like a truck was going to run over me. And I looked over and there was a pair of pants, and I thought, you know what, I don't want my sons to know that I died by suicide by drugs. So I put those pants on, got dressed, went upstairs. The bus just happened to be there. I just happened to put on the pair of pants that had my bus pass in them. I got downtown in Saskatoon to Midtown Plaza, and I grabbed some tacos from Taco Time. I couldn't eat them because my lips are so chapped. And I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there and I realized I needed to call my mom. When in doubt, call your mom. I called my mom. I had used what we call call me cards around here. I'd used that for about 10 years. And by the grace of God, I remembered the number, and I called my mom and I told her everything, right down to the crack cocaine use. And she lives 2 hours away, and the best advice she could give me was to get to the hospital. Well, after the years and years of the Crohn, one thing I knew was the hospital. So I was running to the bus depot, God help, God help, God help, God help. And I believed in God. I shouldn't say that. I knew there was a God, but I didn't know if he would help me. I didn't know if I fully believed in his power. But I was still running to the bus depot. I hadn't drank or eaten in 11 days. I have Crohn's. That's not good for me. And I made it to the number 7 bus. I got on the bus. I headed for University Hospital. They don't drop you off. They drop you off on College Drive. So I was running again to the hospital. And I got into and God help, God help, God help, God help, God help. That's the only thing I could say. God help, God help, God help. I got to the hospital and I collapsed into cardiac arrest the minute I walked in the door. 29 years old. Cardiac arrest. From there, I was lucky to have a blessed doctor. He suggested that I get detox if I wanted it, and I said yes. I went to Larson House in Saskatoon. I was in there for a few days. Some people came to visit me. They helped me with some choices. And I ended up in North Battleford at a 3-month treatment center called Hopeview. And thank goodness it was 3 months. Because for the first month, it took me over a month to wrap around my head the whole idea of even recovering. The whole idea of recovery. I just kept thinking that I was just going to clean up and go back to whatever I was doing, and obviously that is not well, right? And during that 3 months, I had a friend that was in Hopeview that he was going to a place called Living Faith Chapel, and he was getting picked up all the time. And one day I happened to go because they were doing a hockey things, and I liked hockey, so I went, and I really liked it. Plus, there were lots of cute girls. And if I have to be honest, I wanted to see the cute girls again. I thought, if I'm in a treatment center, what the heck, I might as well go to church and see these girls. And so I came to the church where I'm actually sitting right now. And lo and behold, there's this beautiful sound system and awesome music and soft, comfy chairs instead of hard wooden pews and this big, bright, open sanctuary. And it's like, I like this. And I wasn't even paying attention to the girls. Next thing you know, I'm singing away with my friend Rick, and bless him. And then a family called the Bargains, they started just picking us up all the time, and then they would take us to their house for lunch. And what I learned was love and fellowship. And fellowship was the key. A lot of the people my age were surrounding us. I ended up going to Bible study with people my age and learning a little bit more. And eventually I got baptized and gave my life to Jesus in 2002. And from that point, I stayed clean and sober for 7 years. I even worked at the church for a couple of years. I did maintenance and janitorial. I managed a halfway house for 2 years called the House of Hope, which I'm hoping to start again one day. Praise Jesus. And I just went into work, and I loved it. Life was good. I was successful mentally and physically. And I met a girl at work, and we ended up getting married. We opened a restaurant. Our kids were the same age, bought a house. Things were going pretty well. Next thing you know, I had a beer. And then I was having more beer, and more beer, and then I was having rum, and then I was partying, and then I was doing shooters. And one thing led to another, and I was straight back in the alcohol. Not so good. One day, my wife and I did cocaine with some of her friends, and that just opened another door, which wasn't good. And I did cocaine a couple more times with her and her friends, and then we ended up splitting. My wife and I split. So into a huge depression I went, and I again went full bore into my restaurant, tried to keep it going, but that only lasted 3-4 months because I was not living a healthy life, and I just couldn't do it by myself. So I shut the restaurant down, moved away, opened some restaurants, went just kind of traveled around opening restaurants for a friend of mine, Mr. Ribs. And I compartmentalized everything. I put all my wife, my feelings, I put everything in different compartments and just left them there. I didn't deal with anything. So that was not so fun. Wasn't doing cocaine. I had a little slowed down on the pot. I'd slowed down on the drinking, but I was supremely unhealthy. And I was living in denial and depression, I guess, for the most part. I liked working, I liked hanging out, I was happy at work, but every time I went home, I just wanted to die. I did not like life, my health was failing. I couldn't accept my health failing. And I just needed to get control over my life, and I became introverted. A friend of mine took me into her basement. I started a really good relationship with one of her daughters, Megan, who's been a blessing in my life. We chat every day to this still now, 10 years later. Massive blessing. Excuse me. And I kind of got my head on straight a little bit there, which wasn't so bad. Moved in. I actually ended up moving out of there into a nice house. Started dating a nice girl. You know, things were going pretty well. I had calmed down on everything. I wasn't using cocaine until I did. And that time was pretty much the end of me. I was working in a place that paid me cash every day and around people who were doing that kind of stuff every day. And next thing you know, I was doing it every second. Every time I could afford it, I was doing it. And I was living to do drugs to hide from my pain that I was feeling, and then I would feel depressed, and I'd feel depressed. It was just that. Drugs, depression, drugs, depression, drugs, depression, drugs, depression. It was sick. It was getting pretty sick, and same time I was projecting that I was okay, and on the outside I was okay, but on the inside I was dying. And everything that I was doing was not good for my body. Developed arthritis and fibromyalgia, and of course that just started to get worse, but I wouldn't recognize it. I wouldn't admit it. You know, I walk with a cane now today, and I struggle with that. But eventually I was given some money from my uncle, and I started my own business, Bearded Chef Sask. And that actually became extremely successful, and so I was really taking care of the other stuff. I wasn't doing the other stuff as much. I kind of slowed down on the cocaine. I was slowed down on the I slowed down on the drinking, but I was still doing marijuana, smoking marijuana. And the alcohol actually got to a point where it wasn't really a big deal anymore, except on my days off. If I had 3 more beers, I like to go down to my local pub, have a beer and a pint on my day off. I had Mondays off. But every once in a while, I'd have 3 pints and bad choices. 3 pints, and I was calling a guy, trying to meet him for cocaine. And so again, there down went the spiral again. And all the money I made, I spent. But I had everybody in Saskatoon had this image of the bearded chef, the bearded chef, the bearded chef. I had a huge social media profile and a following, and I felt as long as I was doing good that I was okay. You know, like I wasn't missing work. I wasn't doing drugs or anything like that. Or I wasn't getting drunk on the days that I worked. It was only my day off. So on Mondays I would make a mess of myself. I'd be in depression for the rest of the week. Monday I would get rid of the depression by hiding it in the drugs, and then I'd be depressed the rest of the week. And I got suicidal because it was too horrible, and my health was so bad that by the end of my day of work, I was crawling up the stairs in my condo to rental to get to bed just enough to recuperate for the next day. And I was doing that 6 days a week, and then cocaine 1 day a week, and then cocaine was 1 day, depression for 6, cocaine, depression, and it got so brutal that I was starting to feel lonely because I was isolated. And so then I started calling escorts. And so then the next thing wasn't just cocaine. It was cocaine and hookers, cocaine and hookers, cocaine and hookers. And brutal. I'm so embarrassed. The guilt and shame and embarrassment and disappointment, if anybody would have found out, and the disappointment that I was hiding. One of my core values is truth. And here I was trying to tell the truth, but I was lying to myself. And the day that I realized when I was lying to myself that I was still lying to everybody else, which was an epiphany, and it was an ugly one, I decided that it was time for my end game. So for a little while, for a couple months, I planned my end game. I saved some money. I paid my rent, and I was waiting for my son's birthday because I didn't want to do it before his birthday. And I made my plan. I made my noose. I had everything sitting at home. I did my research so I could... I'm not going to get into details because I don't want to trigger anybody or myself. But I tried real hard to do the right thing so that it would be as easy for me as possible. So I would not chicken out. And so we went for lunch. I went for supper or lunch with my family, knowing I was going home to commit suicide afterwards. And my family still didn't know. That's how well I hid it. As introverted as I am, when I'm out around people, I can become super extroverted, and that was my hiding, my methodology of covering up how I was feeling. I was just super loud, and it wasn't for attention. It was just so that they didn't see how hurting I was or how depressed I was. And so I went home that day and smoked a joint, hung myself. Obviously, I didn't succeed. The pain around my neck from the cords was incredibly painful, and I jumped back up on my chair because I didn't realize how painful it was going to be. And I went upstairs and I got on my laptop. I started doing some research on how I could do it better or easier, and I did. So over 4 days, I tried 6 different ways. 6 different times. I hung there. I hung with my foot on the chair. I just tried. I took a bunch of pills and drank a bottle of rum, thinking I wouldn't feel the pain that way, but I just passed out. And then I woke up feeling guilty because I was stupid. And then the last time I tried, I went down, dropped myself off the chair, and I could feel my head feeling like it was going to explode. And I felt like I was going to pass out, and I put a foot on the chair, and as I put a foot on the chair, I felt like my eyes were going to pop out of my head. And I panicked. So I got up, scrambled back on the chair, and I couldn't get the noose off my neck, so I was panicking, I was freaking out, I was hurting myself. I almost fell off the chair again and killed myself accidentally. And it was horrible. It was a horrible feeling and a horrible thought, and I'm absolutely terrified right now of ever having that feeling again. But at the same time, I felt like a coward because I like to succeed in everything I do. I like to go all in. I like to try my best. I like to be the best possible. And so since I failed, I didn't know what to do. So I went up to my room and cried. And cried. And cried. For hours I cried. Eventually I phoned my dad. And he lives 2 hours away in Spearwood. And he said, stay alive until I get there. And he hopped in his car immediately and drove. I'm guessing he sped because he was there pretty fast. And he came in, of course, everything was still hanging there. I was just laying in my bed crying. There was booze, pills, everything just laying around. I hadn't showered in 4 days. I stunk. I was disgusting from crying. And my dad just loved me. Told me I was going to be okay, that he would do whatever he could. My dad says he's an atheist, but if there's a man I look to in life that acts like Jesus, he would be the one. Just without thought, he just per se whisked me up in his arms and held me and took me home. I went home and talked to my mom and laid on the couch and they fed me some food. I tried to get some food in me and get my thoughts back to me. And the next day I called one of the pastors here at church, Pastor Deb McNabb. And she said, when can you be here? So I came here the next morning at 10 o'clock. And I talked and cried and talked and cried and talked and cried. And she said, I always knew you'd come back. I just didn't think it would take this long. And she asked me to move back, and I said yes right away. And within a week, I was moved back to North Battleford here. And she involved me in some groups. She put me up in a safe place. I was still living there now, almost a year later. And God has grabbed a hold of me. Jesus has filled me with the Holy Spirit so I won't kill myself again. I'm not saying I don't struggle. I struggle every day. But I know God's bigger than that. And he's carried me through some mountains and the valleys since then. I've spent 4 weeks in mental health through a medication change for depression and anxiety that I couldn't handle. I had fallen down. I was in a wheelchair. I busted up my knee. But I did some learning. I was there for a purpose. When I was sitting there in mental health, I used to be the person who would take people there, go visit people there with the House of Hope, and we've been involved with the church. And I was the guy that took people there, not the guy that was sitting there. So it was humbling. And I realized that God put me there for a reason. And it was to humble and get rid of whatever pride I had left. And as I sat there reading my Bible, people came to the table. People came and sat at the table. People joined me. I just was honest. I was truthful. I didn't know, I wasn't willing to hide anything, because when I hide things, I just want to die. And so nowadays, I speak the truth, whether you like it or not. I am who I am. I wish I was Jesus. I wish I could go out in the world and just touch people and heal them. Now I just want to be closer in the image of Jesus, in the likeness of Jesus. I came back, I got heavily involved in the church again, which again, I knew back before then that Jesus has saved me before. And as long as I'm willing, he'll save me again, and he has. In leaps and bounds, he's carried me and maybe even through me. He's pretty amazing. I've had revelations. He spoke to me. He's allowed me to start 2 different ministries. He's allowed me to come to the church. The people have welcomed me here to come to the church to do my studies. I'm studying to get ordained this year. I have a mental health ministry. I have a recovery ministry. Celebrate Recovery Battlefords. The mental health is Beard for Mental Health on Facebook, and we're doing a fundraiser for mental health and getting involved with the Better Together project. And I find that I sleep less right now, but I have more energy because God just fills me every day. And again, he has a plan. And I know that he's taken me from, I used to pray Jeremiah 29:11, for God has a purpose and a plan for you to prosper and have a future. And that's what I prayed for a long, long time. And now I understand, I get it. He has given me his plan, given me his purpose. I understand that I went through what I did, and I survived. I've survived what I went through for a purpose. And I know this is a short version, but it's still quite long, but this is not everything. More stuff is going to come out here and there in more topical, probably, testimonies, so topical messages. My life, I'll talk about relationships with my brother, my family, my grandpa, who I told to F off one time, and then I never got a chance to apologize. So those are some hurts, habits, and hang-ups that I still have. But I know I'm not perfect. I accept that I'm not perfect. I'm not going to try to be perfect anymore. I've spent over 40 years trying to be perfect, and I just finally realized that I'm never going to be. But I'm happy where I am today. God has blessed me abundantly. Not money, I'm broke. I never have any money, but I have time. I have lots of time, but I'm broke. I never have money. But I have a place to come and study. I have a roof over my head, and once in a while I have food. Overall, I struggle with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, OCD, PTSD. I have 3 chronic illnesses, Crohn's, which I've had since I was 15, arthritis, which I'm going to guess I've had for about 10, 12 years, 15 years, but really bad the last few years, and fibromyalgia, which I'm just starting to understand, which is real. Believe me, it's real. I have pain everywhere all the time. I can't even scratch my leg or anything like I used to, and it's like digging a knife in me. So I'm trying to learn about my cognitive abilities and my nervous system, and to see what I can do to do that. But of course, as I'm a chef, I'm also trying to study into food sciences as well, to see if there's some science to food that can help with my pain. Even if I can take 10% away, right now I'd feel better. So that's me. I'm here at Living Faith Chapel 3-4 days a week. Anybody's welcome to come visit, come talk. My door is open. I'm just here studying. I can make time for anybody. I'm very thankful, and God bless. Doug's Testimony 2020.